I died on a Tuesday night in the penthouse suite of the Waldorf Astoria. My throat crushed under the weight of my own husband's hands, his face twisted into something unrecognizable, pure, venomous triumph. The last thing I saw was the glittering Manhattan skyline mocking me through the floor-to-ceiling windows, as if the city itself knew I'd been played for a fool. And then, nothing. Blackness. The kind that swallows screams whole. But death, it turns out, isn't the end. It's a goddamn reset button with a vicious sense of humor. I woke up gasping, not in some ethereal void, but in the cramped back office of our family distillery in upstate New York, the air thick with the scent of aged bourbon and fresh sawdust. My hands, my young hands, unscarred and steady, gripped the edge of a scarred oak desk, and the calendar on the wall screamed June 15th, 2015. 10 years. 10 fucking years back. To the day before my brother sold me out to the feds for a cut of the inheritance pie. My name is Stella Harlan, and in my first life, I was the golden girl of Harlan Whiskey, CEO at 28, the face of a dynasty built on bootleg roots and boardroom battles. Dad always said I had the killer instinct, the one that turned our moonshine racket into a billion-dollar empire. But killer instinct doesn't save you when your blood turns on you. That Tuesday, it wasn't just my husband, Jack, who ended me. It was the whole rotten core, my father, Adlan Senor, who looked the other way, my brother, Tommy, who planted the evidence that painted me as the embezzler, and even my own mother, whispering in their ears about how I was too ambitious for a woman in this family. I stumbled to the tiny mirror above the sink, staring at the face that hadn't yet earned the fine lines of betrayal. 28 again. The scar from that skiing accident in Aspen, courtesy of Tommy's sabotage, was still just a faint pink line on my chin. My heart hammered like a freight train, memories flooding in, the trial where they all testified against me, the prison bars closing like a coffin lid, the accident in my cell that Jack arranged to look like suicide. No, not suicide. Murder. Clean and quiet. Because loose ends like me could unravel their perfect little empire. Stella? You okay in there? The voice from the doorway yanked me back. It was Tommy, all boyish charm and shit-eating grin, leaning against the frame in his pressed khakis and polo, the uniform of the trust fund slacker. In this timeline, he was still my baby brother, the one I'd pulled out of juvie and into the business. God, the irony burned. I forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach my eyes. Just a headache. Tom. Long night prepping for the investor meeting. My voice was steady, but inside, I was mapping his end already. Not with bullets or poison. That was too merciful. Too quick. No. I'd dismantle him piece by piece. Make him watch his world crumble like the empires we'd both bled for. He chuckled, clapping me on the shoulder a little too hard. You're a machine? Cease. Dad's lucky to have you running point. Me? I'd just drink the profits. He winked, and I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. Lucky? Oh. He'd learn. That night, I drove back to the city in the old Mustang I'd bought with my first bonus. The engine's roar drowning out the ghosts in my head. The skyline loomed like an old enemy, but this time, I wasn't charging in blind. I had foreknowledge, the ultimate weapon. Harlan Whiskey was on the cusp of its biggest deal, a merger with Sterling Spirits, backed by a cadre of Wall Street sharks. In my first life, I'd sealed it, only for Tommy to forge documents, making it look like I'd skimmed millions. The feds swooped in. Dad disowned me publicly to save face. And Jack. Jack played the grieving widower while cashing my life insurance. Pulling into the garage of our brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, back when Jack and I still pretended at love, I killed the engine and sat there, fists clenched on the wheel. The first decision hit me like a gut punch. Do I confront them now? Spill the beans and watch them scramble?
No.
Too messy. Too soon. Revenge wasn't a sprint, it was a slow burn, the kind that leaves scars deeper than knives. Inside, Jack was sprawled on the couch, nursing a scotch. His tie loosened like he owned the world. He looked up, that easy smile flashing. Hey,
Babe.
rough day. In 10 years, I'd learned he was already sleeping with his assistant, feeding Tommy intel on my every move. I crossed to him, dropping my bag with a thud that made him flinch. Leaning down, I kissed him, deep, lingering, the way he liked. The roughest. But I've got you. His eyes lit up, oblivious to the venom in my touch. That night, as he snored beside me, I lay awake, plotting. Step 1. Secure my assets. I'd start small, siphoning funds into untouchable offshore accounts. Step 2. Plant seeds of doubt. Make Tommy think Jack was the weak link. Step 3. The merger. I'd use it as bait. Let them think they were reeling me in, only to cut the line at the last second. The next morning, I woke before dawn, slipping into the kitchen to brew coffee strong enough to strip paint. Jack mumbled something about a late meeting, and I nodded, already dialing my lawyer, a sharp-as-nails woman named Rita who'd get me out of prison in the first life. Too late to matter.
Rita.
It's Stella. I need a full audit of my personal holdings. Discreet. And draw up a postnup. Just in case. She paused. Papers rustling. Everything okay? Stell? Never better.
Lies.
But the good kind. The kind that built walls. By noon, I was back at the distillery, buried in spreadsheets that hid the real game, tracing every dirty dollar Tommy had skimmed under Dad's nose. In this life, I'd known about his side hustle with the Russian importers, fake labels, cut-rate booze flooding the black market. First life, I'd covered for him, thinking family first. Big mistake. Now, I'd feed it to the wolves. Dad called me into his office that afternoon, the room a shrine to excess, leather-bound ledgers, a humidor stuffed with Cubans, and a portrait of great-grandpa Harlan glowering from the wall. He was 65, still ramrod straight, his silver hair slicked back like he was auditioning for a Scorsese flick.
Stella. Kiddo.
Merger talks are heating up.
Sterling CEO.
That prick Whitaker wants a face-to-face. You handle it. I leaned against his desk, casual as sin. Already on it, Dad.
But.
I've been thinking. Tommy's been off lately. Distracted. You notice. His bushy brows furrowed. Your brother's fine. Just needs seasoning. Classic deflection. Harlan men didn't air laundry, they buried it. I nodded, planting the seed.
Sure.
Just watching her back. As I left, I caught Tommy in the hallway, eavesdropping like the weasel he was.
Perfect.
The weeks blurred into a haze of double lives. By day, I was the dutiful daughter, charming Whitaker over steak at Peter Luger, sealing preliminary terms with a handshake that felt like signing my own death warrant all over again. By night, I was the ghost, hacking into Tommy's emails with a VPN Rita setup, screenshotting every incriminating thread. Jack started noticing my late nights, but I played it off with tears and makeup sex, keeping him hooked. Then came the first crack. A tip to an old contact at the Journal, anonymous. Of course, about irregularities in Harlan's supply chain. Nothing damning, just enough to make the stock twitch. Dad called a family dinner that night. The Brownstones' dining room dressed to the nines, crystal, silver, the works. Mom fluttered around, her pearls clacking like warning beads, while Tommy cracked jokes to hide his sweat. We sat down to ribeye and risotto, the air thick with unspoken agendas. Jack poured the wine, our own label, irony of ironies, and raised a glass. To the Harlans. Unbreakable. I waited until the clinks died, then set my glass down with deliberate slowness. The room hushed, forks pausing midair. Unbreakable. I echoed, my voice slicing the quiet like a razor. That's funny. Because from where I'm sitting, we're all just one bad pour away from shattering. Dad chuckled. Nervous. What's that supposed to mean? Stell. I met each gaze. Dad's wary. Mom's confused. Tommy's flickering with panic. Jack's polished blank. It means we're not family anymore. The words hung there, heavy as lead, and the silence that followed, it was the first fracture line in the glass. The silence stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Mom's fork clattered against her plate first, a tiny avalanche in the quiet.
Stella Marie Harlan.
What on earth has gotten into you? Her voice was that perfect blend of Southern drawl and Brooklyn bite, honed from years of PDA wars and charity galas. But underneath?
Fear.
The kind that comes when your perfect world tilts. I didn't flinch. I'd rehearsed this in the shower that morning, water pounding my skull like accusations. Nothing's gotten into me.
Mom.
Clarity has. I pushed my chair back, standing tall in the Jimmy Choo pumps I'd bought to feel invincible. Clarity about how this family operates. Lies on lies, buried so deep we forget where the truth starts. Tommy recovered quickest, his laugh forced and barking.
Jesus.
Stell, you been hitting the sampling room too hard? It's the merger stress. Lay off the Dramamine and shut up.
Tommy.
The words flew out sharper than I intended, but damn, it felt good. His jaw slackened, the golden boy unmasked for a split second. You think I don't know about the Russians? The shipments rerouted through Jersey docks, labeled as experimental blends?
Dad.
You signed off on the manifests last month. Dad's face drained of color, his napkin crumpling in his fist. Jack shifted beside me, his hand brushing my thigh under the table, a reflex to soothe or control. I shrugged it off, stepping away.
Stella, Dad growled.
Low and dangerous. This isn't the time or place. When is the time? Then, when I'm in cuffs again. Oh, wait. That hasn't happened yet. The slip. God. The slip. Their eyes widened in unison, a chorus of what the fucks. I covered quick, forcing a bitter laugh. Figuratively speaking. But let's not pretend we're saints. Tommy's skimming. Jack's got his meetings that smell like Chanel no. 5.
And you?
Dad? You're the kingpin who looks away because it's easier than admitting your son's a liability. Mom gasped, hand to her chest like I'd stabbed her. How dare you? I dare, because someone has to. My pulse thundered.
but I held the line.
This wasn't the full reveal. It was the appetizer. The hook in the gut to make them squirm. We're not unbreakable.
Dad.
We're brittle. And if we don't fix it, the whole damn thing comes down. Jack stood then, all 6'2" of calculated calm, his lawyer smile in place. Babe, let's take this upstairs. Family meeting. Yeah. His eyes pleaded, don't do this here, but I saw the calculation underneath, the wheels turning on how to spin this to his advantage. I shook my head. Slow and final. No more upstairs huddles where we pretend the rod isn't there. Eat your dinner. Or don't. But think about what I've said. I walked out, heels clicking like gunshots on the hardwood, leaving the wreckage behind. In the kitchen, I poured a shot of our bottom shelf rye, burned my throat like truth, and texted Rita, escalate the audit. Full forensic on all family accounts. NDAs for the journal contact. Upstairs, I heard the murmurs start. Dad's booming defense. Tommy's whiny protests. Mom's tears. Jack knocked softly an hour later, slipping into bed like a shadow. Talk to me.
Stell.
What's really going on? I rolled toward him, tracing his jaw with a finger that itched to claw. Just tired of the games.
Jack.
Tired of carrying everyone. He pulled me close, murmuring apologies into my hair. And for a moment, I let myself sink into it. The warmth.
The lie.
But my mind was elsewhere, tallying the moves. By morning, the stock dipped another % on rumors of internal strife. The journal piece dropped at 8 a.m. Harlan Whiskey faces supply chain scrutiny amid family tensions. Dad called at 9:15, voice like gravel. My office.
Now.
The drive to the distillery was a blur of autumn leaves whipping past, the Hudson Valley mocking me with its postcard beauty. Inside, the boardroom was a war zone, Tommy pacing, lawyers hovering, Dad at the head like a deposed king. Explain, he barked as I entered. I took the empty chair at the foot, owning the space. Simple. We're vulnerable. Competitors are circling, Sterling included, and if we don't clean house, the feds will for us. I slid a folder across the table. The one Rita had compiled overnight, redacted emails, bank transfers traced to Tommy's Cayman accounts. Not everything, not the full extent, but enough to sting. Tommy snatched it, face purpling. This is bullshit. Forged. Proven. I cut in. By 3 independent firms. Your call?
Dad.
Cut him loose. Or we all sink. The room erupted. Tommy lunged, but Dad's glare stopped him cold. Enough. He rubbed his temples, the weight of decades settling. Stella's right.
Tommy.
You're on leave. Indefinite. Security escort you out. My brother's eyes met mine then. Pure hate. The kind that promised payback. Good. Let him stew. That night, over takeout lo mein in the brownstone, Jack out, working late, again, I felt the first real thrill. Power. Untainted. But sleep brought the dreams, my cell, the chokehold, the betrayal replaying in HD. I woke sweating, vowing they'd pay. Everyone. The merger talks dragged into November, Whitaker pushing for exclusivity clauses that would have tied my hands in the first life. This time, I countered with ironclad terms. Harlan retains majority control. Veto on acquisitions. He balked. But I had leverage, a whisper campaign about Sterling's own tax dodges. courtesy of my journal mole. Tommy vanished for a week, surfacing in Miami with friends, but I tracked him via Rita's PI. Photos. Him with low-level mob types. The kind who peddled our fakes. I forwarded them anonymously to Dad, who called a tense Thanksgiving at the estate in the Hamptons. Snow dusted the dunes. The ocean a gray roar. But inside, the air crackled. Mom tried peacemaking with turkey and cranberry relish, but Dad's toast fell flat. To better days. Tommy glared daggers across the pie, Jack mediating with his silver tongue. After dessert, as they nursed ports by the fire, I pulled Dad aside in the study. "It's worse than you think," I said, handing him a USB drive. "Tommy's not just skimming. He's selling secrets. Recipes, supplier lists to the Russians, and now, whispers of the Colombians." Dad's hand trembled on the decanter. "Why tell me now?" "Because I love this family enough to save it. From him. From all of us. If we let the poison spread. Lies wrapped in truth." He nodded, broken, and I left him there, staring at the family portrait above the mantel, us all smiling. Pre-fracture. December brought the holidays, and with them, the first real test. Jack proposed a romantic getaway to Aspen, same slopes where Tommy's accident had nearly crippled me last time. I agreed, but packed a go bag and a burner phone. On the lift, as we soared over powder fields, he turned earnest. "You've changed,
Stell.
Stronger. Sexier. But distant."
Talk to me.
I leaned into the wind, goggles fogging. "Distant? Maybe I'm just seeing clear. You ever wonder if we're building on sand?" He laughed it off. But that night, in the suite, I slipped a tracker into his ski jacket. Morning run. He twisted an ankle on a black diamond. My anonymous tip to the resort about loose signage paid off. While he iced, I hit the slope solo. Adrenaline singing. Back in the city, the PI report landed. Jack's assistant was a ghost LLC. Funneling cash to Tommy. The web tightened. My husband and brother, in bed together, figuratively.
For now.
Rage boiled. But I channeled it, a late-night call to Whitaker. Sweetening the deal with a personal incentive, Harlan steak in Sterling's craft line. But with strings attached to freeze out family distractions. Christmas Eve. The brownstone glowed with lights. But the tree felt like a pyre. Mom and Dad arrived early. Tommy fashionably late with excuses. Gifts exchanged, perfume for me from Jack. A monogrammed flask from Dad. I played the part, laughing at Tommy's jokes. But under the table, my foot accidentally knocked his wine into his lap, staining his slacks like blood. "Oops," I said, handing him a napkin. Slippery when wet. His smile didn't reach his eyes.
Yeah.
"Watch your step, sis." The new year dawned with a bang. Sterling signed. Headlines blaring, "Harlan Empire secures mega merger." Stocks soared 15%. Dad threw a bash at the distillery. Black tie under barrel-vaulted ceilings. I wore red, blood on snow, and danced with Whitaker, whispering about contingencies for if Harlan internals went south. Jack cornered me in the tasting room, bourbon on his breath. "This is it.
Stell.
We're unstoppable." I clinked my glass to his. Unstoppable? Or just delayed? He frowned, but I kissed it away, tasting the future on his lips. Behind the scenes, the noose tightened. Rita's audit uncovered Jack's shell company, linked to Tommy's scams. I didn't confront. I waited, feeding crumbs to Dad. By Valentine's, Tommy was back, reinstated on probation, his tail between his legs. But his emails? Desperate. Plotting with Jack. We flip her board vote. Pin the Russians on her. Dad folds. We split the pot. Fools. They didn't know I had the originals, the backups, the kill switch. That spring, as cherry blossoms choked the city, I made my first truly controversial call. Tommy's probation included a company car, mine to rig with a GPS that fed straight to my phone. One rainy night, he veered off route to a warehouse in Red Hook. I followed at a distance, hood up, watching from shadows as he unloaded crates stamped Harlan Reserve, property of Petrova Imports. Russians. Proof incarnate. I could have called the cops then. End it clean. But no, that was mercy. Instead, I snapped photos, sent them to Whitaker with a note, leverage for the merger addendum. Harlan cleanup in progress. And to Dad, he's escalating. Your move. The dinner that followed, ostensibly to celebrate Q1 profits, was the powder keg. Same table, same risotto, but the air hummed with electricity. Tommy arrived last, eyes darting. Jack poured, steady as ever. Dad cleared his throat. Stella's got concerns. Again. I didn't wait. Not concerns. Facts. I laid the photos out like a dealer in Vegas. Faces paling around the circle. Tommy's not on leave anymore. He's on the payroll of our enemies. Chaos. Tommy bolted, chair toppling. Jack lunged for the pics, but I swept them up. Mom sobbed into her napkin. Dad just stared.
Defeated.
You're tearing us apart, Jack hissed, grabbing my arm. I wrenched free, voice ice.
No. Jack.
I'm saving what's left. By burning the rest. As sirens wailed in the distance, my anonymous 911, timed perfectly, the foundation cracked wide open. Sirens cut the night like scalpels. Red and blue lights pulsing through the brownstone windows, turning the dining room into a disco of dread. Tommy froze halfway to the door, sweat beading on his forehead like dew on a corpse. What the hell did you do?
Stella.
His whisper was venom, but his eyes, wide, feral, betrayed the boy who'd once begged me to bail him out of that underage drinking bust. I didn't answer. Just watched as Dad rose slowly, the patriarch's mantle cracking under the weight.
Tommy. Seat.
It wasn't a request. Cops swarmed in minutes later, my tip precise, suspected smuggling at Harlan family residence. They didn't cuff him on the spot. But the questions? They peeled back layers like an onion, each one stinging. Jack played the hero. All smooth apologies to the badges. Misunderstanding. Officers. Family spat. But I saw the flicker in his eyes. The calculation shifting from damage control to self-preservation. Mom clutched her rosary, lapsed Catholic that she was, muttering prayers to saints she'd ignored for decades. By dawn, Tommy was in holding, bond set at $250K. Dad posted it silently, his checkbook heavier than his heart. The merger teetered. Whitaker called at 6 a.m. Voice clipped. Stella. This cleanup better not tank the deal. Or we walk. Trust me, I replied, staring at the city from the penthouse balcony. Wait.
No.
Still the brownstone. The Waldorf was years away. but the view felt the same, in different steel and glass. It's handled. Rito arrived at 8 with coffee and contracts. Her no-bullshit bob framing a face that said she'd seen worse. You sure about this? Feds get wind. It's RICO territory. Whole families exposed. Only the guilty parts. I sign the addendum. Harlan cedes 10% equity to Sterling for consulting. Code for hush money. But buried in the fine print, a clause triggering full disclosure if internal threats resurfaced. My insurance. Jack stormed in mid-morning. Ty askew. Fury barely leashed. You set him up. My own brother-in-law, Jesus. Stell. What the fuck? Your brother-in-law? I echoed, slow and mocking, as I filed the papers. Funny. Last I checked, you were wiring him 5 figures a month from that assistant fund. Care to explain? He deflated. Then, collapsing onto the couch like a punctured balloon. It was for us. For the future. Tommy promised. Tommy promises the moon and delivers mud. I sat across from him, legs crossed, the predator now. But you chose him over me. Again, the word hung, heavy with ghosts he couldn't see. In my mind's eye, his hands around my throat, the lie of his grief at my funeral. He reached for my hand, desperate. I love you.
Stell.
More than. Save it. I pulled away. The decision crystallizing. Divorce papers. Drafted last week. Slid across the coffee table.
Sign.
Or the IRS gets a full dossier on your shell games. His face crumpled, shock. Betrayal. The mirror of what I'd felt dying. You're destroying everything.
No. Jack.
You did that years ago. He signed, trembling, and left with a duffel and a slammed door. The silence echoed, but it was mine now.
Clean.
Words spread like wildfire through the family network. Cousins in Kentucky texting condolences. Aunts in Florida offering prayers. Mom called daily, voice quavering. He's your brother.
Stella.
Blood. Blood's thicker than water. I replied once. But it stains easier. She hung up, and I didn't call back. Spring thawed into a brutal summer, the distillery humming under my sole command. Dad retreated to the Hamptons, golfing, but really nursing his scotch and regrets. Tommy's trial loomed in September. Federal charges, wire fraud, smuggling, conspiracy. His lawyer begged to plea, but I stonewalled, testifying with cold precision. Dates?
Amounts.
The photos that damned him. Whitaker. Meanwhile, warm to me, dinners at Le Bernardine, his hand lingering on my elbow. Your force.
Harlan.
Remind me of myself at your age. Flattery. Sure. But useful. I leaked Tommy's plea details to the Post. Harlan heir turned state's evidence. Implicates family? Was deliberate bait. Dad surfaced from hiding, demanding a summit. We met at the estate. Waves crashing like accusations. He looked older, hollowed, whiskey carving new lines into his face. You want to bury him?
Fine.
But this ends now. The family's done. I poured us both ambers.
Neat.
Ends?
Dad.
It never started right. You built this on lies, Grandpa's bootleg empire. Your connections with the unions. I covered for you. For Tommy. For everyone. And what? A knife in the back. He sipped, eyes distant. World's not fair.
Kid.
You knew that going in. I know it now better than ever. The controversial call hit then. The one that twisted my gut. Mercy. Or the final cut. Drop the charges. I'll bury the evidence. But he leaves forever. No shares. No name. Dad's glass paused midair. Why? Because blood. The lie tasted like ash. But it bought time. Tommy walked, exiled to some nowhere town in Montana, consulting for a microdistillery that'd fold in a year, thanks to my quiet sabotage. Jack fought the divorce in court, dragging it out with motions and tears, painting me as the Ice Queen. Tabloids ate it up. Whiskey Widow wrecks Harlan Dynasty. I countered with leaks, his affairs, the funds. Judge ruled in weeks. Alimony minimal. Assets split clean. He moved to a walk-up in Chelsea. Last I heard, hawking real estate to ex-frat boys. By fall, the merger closed, Harlan Sterling a powerhouse. Me at the helm. Whitaker proposed partnership. Not just business, a ring over duck confit in Paris. I declined, polite but firm. I'm not looking to merge lives right now. Back stateside, the high faded. Dreams worsened. Not just my death, but flashes of complicity, me ignoring Dad's deals, laughing off Tommy's red flags. Was I the villain too? The thought gnawed, but revenge whispered louder. Tommy resurfaced in November. A burner call at midnight. You think you won? Watch your back.
Cease.
Families forever.
Click.
I traced it to a payphone in Billings, sloppy. But the threat lit the fuse. The dinner I called wasn't celebration, it was detonation. Holiday lights twinkled outside the distillery's grand hall. But inside, shadows loomed.
Dad. Mom.
Tommy, paroled early on good behavior. Jack, invited as closure.
And me.
The board hovered. Investors milling like sharks scenting blood. We sat to prime rib, toasts clinking uneasily. Tommy smirked across the table. Jack avoided my eyes. Mom prattled about grandkids. Dad raised his glass. To resilience. I waited for the lull. Then stood. Voice carrying like a verdict. Resilience? Or reinvention? Heads turned. Because this family? It's a house of cards. And I'm done propping it up. Gasps rippled. Tommy sneered. Here we go again.
No. Tommy.
For the last time. I pulled the trigger. A projector word to life. Screens blooming with evidence. Wire transfers. Affair texts. Forged merger docs from the first life I'd digitized before dying. You all betrayed me. Sold me out for scraps. And in case you forgot how that ends. A clip played, grainy security footage. Time-stamped 10 years future. My suicide in prison. Jack's silhouette in the shadows. Impossible. Their faces blanched. How?
Dad choked on his wine. Stella.
What is?
Ditaka. I lied smooth.
But based on patterns. Yours. Chaos erupted. Accusations flying. Chairs scraping. Tommy lunged. Fists flying. But security, my hires, hauled him back. Jack bolted for the door. Mom wailing. Dad just sat.
Shattered.
Why now? Because the breaking point's here. I leaned in, whispering, and I'm not breaking with it. As cops swarmed again, this time for all of them, the hall emptied, leaving me in the glow of screens flickering like dying stars. The controversial heart of it? I'd spared Tommy once. Out of blood. Now?
No merci.
But as the doors slammed, doubt crept. Was this justice? Or just my own poison spreading? The fallout hit like a nor'easter. Winds howling through the headlines. Harlan Whiskey implodes. CEO exposes dynasty of deceit. Pundits on CNBC dissected it like a frog in bio class. Ambitious daughter turns on father. Brother faces life in Supermax. Ex-husband flees to Canada. Jack didn't flee. He holed up in a Jersey motel. Lawyered to the hilt. But my evidence was airtight.
Tommy?
Indicted on RICO. Facing 25 to life. Dad surrendered quietly. Pleading to tax evasion, house arrest in the Hamptons. His empire stripped to a pension. Mom? She vanished to her sisters in Savannah. Radio silence broken only by a single postcard. Blood or not. You're dead to me. It arrived on a Tuesday. Same as my death day. And I burned it in the brownstone's fireplace, watching the edges curl like my old life. The distillery ran on autopilot under interim suits from Sterling, Whitaker's Sharks, circling the carcass. I stepped back. Sabbatical, but really, I was ghost slaying. Nights in the penthouse, I'd upgraded post-divorce. Waldorf views mocking me still, I pored over old files. Hunting the why. Why me? The answer slithered out in Dad's hidden ledger. Unearthed by Rita, a clause in Grandpa's will. The empire to the strongest Harlan blood, interpreted loosely, but with a codicil, only one heir. They'd planned to eliminate me from the jump. Jack the executor. Rage? Sure. But laced with pity. We'd all been pawns in a game rigged before birth. December 2015, no.
Wait.
The timeline blurred. It was 2025 now.
No.
Rebirth locked me in 15. But the world spun forward. Holidays loomed.
Solitary.
I flew to Montana on a whim. Tracking Tommy's farm, outside Billings, barren acres. A trailer that screamed defeat. He answered the door gaunt. Unshaven. Eyes hollowed by bail bonds and bad dreams.
Stella. No sis. No venom.
Just exhaustion. I stepped inside. The air stale with regret. Heard you flipped on Dad. Smart. He laughed. Bitter. Collapsing onto a sagging couch. What?
No bloat?
Come to finish me? Tempting. I sat across, scanning the wreckage, empty bottles, eviction notices. But I came for truth. Why? He rubbed his face. Shadows deepening. Dad always said you were the favorite. The fixer.
Me?
The screw-up.
Jack.
He promised we'd run it together. You out of the picture. A shrug.
Defeated.
Ambition's a bitch. Family's worse. I stood, dropping an envelope. Enough cash for a fresh start.
Vengeful.
Controversial? Hell yes. Mercy after the storm. Disappear.
Tommy.
For real. He stared, then nodded. Thanks. I guess. Outside. Snow swirled, blanketing sins. Back in the city, Whitaker waited, dinner at his Upper East Side airy. City lights at our feet. You're free now.
Stella.
Join me. We conquer. I sipped the Merlot.
Considering.
Power. Untainted. But his eyes? Jack's ghost. Freeze relative. But thanks, no. January brought the trial circus. Paparazzi swarming the courthouse. Me on the stand in Chanel armor. Voice steady as I unraveled the web. Yes, Your Honor. The forgeries bear my brother's signature.
No.
I had no prior knowledge until I uncovered it to protect the company. Lies and truths braided tight. Tommy took the deal. 15 years. Minimum security. Dad got probation. His legacy a footnote. Jack. He fought dirty, countersuit for defamation, claiming abuse. I countered with tapes, his voicemails to Tommy, plotting my accident, dropped like a stone. By spring, the dust settled. Harlan Sterling rebranded. Sterling Legacy. Me consulting for a fat retainer. I bought a cabin in the Catskills, wood smoke and quiet, far from the roar. Weekends there. I hiked trails that echoed my old runs, but now with purpose, therapy. Rita called it. Facing the mirror, without flinching. But the twist? It came in May. A FedEx from an anonymous sender, a flash drive, labeled Harlan's Secret. Heart pounding. I plugged it in. Files bloomed, Grandpa's real will. Not the sanitized version. The strongest blood? It wasn't heir, it was daughter.
Me? Specifically.
But buried deeper, Dad's forgery. Dating to my birth. He'd hidden it, grooming Tommy as backup. Because a girl can't run whiskey. And the kicker? My suicide footage reel. Timestamped 2025.
How?
A leak from inside. Timestamp manipulated? No, the drive held my prison intake photo. But altered. Eyes open.
Alive.
I'd faked it?
No.
Impossible. The room spun. Memory fractured. The cell. The noose. But a whisper, fight. Stell.
Fight.
Had I survived? Escaped? The rebirth? A coma dream? Or parallel hell? I called Rita. Voice cracking for the first time. Dig into this. Deep. Weeks blurred. Experts. Hackers. Dead ends. Whitaker pressed harder. Merger of souls.
He joked.
I ghosted. Retreating to the cabin. There, amid pines, the phone rang. Unknown number.
Stella.
Dad's voice. Frail from the estate's isolation.
What? Elite.
All of it. The will. It's yours. Always was. A cough.
Vet.
Forgive. The controversial crux. Forgive and heal? Or twist the knife? And the cycle with fire? No, I said.
Soft.
But I'll visit. Hanging up. I stepped outside. Rain mingling with tears. The reckoning wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. Summer scorched the city. But I thrived. Keynotes at distilleries. Profiles in Forbes. The Whiskey Witch. How Stella Harlan rebuilt from ashes. Tommy wrote from prison. Sorry doesn't cut it. But here it is. Jack. Radio silence. Last seen bartending in Queens. Dad's visit came in July. Wheelchair-bound. Mom trailing like a shadow. The cabin smelled of pine and pie. Her recipe. Peace offering. We talked hours. Regrets spilled like bad batches. I was scared, he admitted. Eyes wet. Of losing control. Of you being better. I nodded. The weight lifting. You did lose it. But maybe we find new. Twist deepened that night. Rita's call. The drive? Forged by Tommy. Pre-arrest. His Hail Mary to frame me as the mastermind. Absolve himself. But the real secret? My death was staged, faked by a loyal guard. Rita's contact. I'd gone underground. Amnesiac. Rebuilding in shadows until the rebirth snapped me back. No time travel. Just survival. Fractured. The memories? Trauma's gift. Propelling the revenge. I laughed.
Wild.
Into the dark.
Free. Truly.
But the high crashed autumn. Whitaker's merger souring. Audits revealing his own skeletons, embezzlement. My planted bait paying dividends. He called.
Panicked, Stella.
Help me. Help yourself.
Click.
His empire crumbled by Halloween.
Headliness o in mine. Now.
Winter loomed again. The dinner's anniversary. I hosted not vengeance, but vigil.
Solo.
At the brownstone. Table set for ghosts. Toast raised. To endings. The door knocked. Hesitant. Mom. Alone. Coat dusted with snow. Can I? I stepped aside. Silence. Then words. The fracture mended. Not whole, but scarred strong. Winter wrapped the city in ice. But the brownstone's hearth crackled defiance. Mom sat across from me that night, her hands twisting a napkin like it held the family sins.
No pie.
No pretense, just coffee. Black as grudges. He won't come, she said finally, meaning Dad. The doctors. It's bad.
Cancer.
The words she'd dodged on the phone. I nodded, stirring sugar I didn't need. Then we go to him. Her eyes widened, shock. Then something softer. Relief? You mean that? The drive to the Hamptons was a gauntlet of gray skies and salted roads. The Mustang's wipers slapping rhythm like accusations. Mom chattered, nervous filler about neighbors. Recipes, but I heard the subtext. Can we fix this? Silence answered best. The estate loomed. Once a fortress. Now a husk. Overgrown hedges. Lights dim. Dad waited in the library. Blankets cocooning his frame. Oxygen hissing like a serpent.
Stella.
His voice rasped, but his eyes sharp. Harlan steel locked on mine. I took the armchair opposite. Mom hovering. Heard you had a secret. A chuckle turned cough. Secrets are our vintage.
But yeah.
The will. Yours from the start. He fumbled a drawer. Producing yellowed paper, Grandpa's script. Codicil bold. To Stella May Harlan. The fire in our blood. I hid it. Thought a son.
Tradition.
Tradition's a crutch. Bitter, but edged with pity. You raised killers. Dad. Starting with yourself. He nodded. Spent. Forgive an old fool? The room held its breath. Controversial to the core. Absolution. Or the pyre. I leaned forward. Hand on his frail.
Veined.
Not yet. But I'll stay. Mom wept then.
Quiet.
And we sat into the night. Stories swapped. Not of glory, but grit. The bootleg runs. The bribes. The loves lost to liquor. Dawn broke with a pact. Hospice at the estate. Me overseeing. Sterling bought out the remnants. Fair price. I walked with millions. Untethered. Tommy's letter arrived mid-January. Prison postmark. Read the will yet? Dad's lie. But mine too, I knew. Played along. Rot starts at home. Enclosed. A sketch. Crude. Us kids. Pre-fracture. Laughing in the distillery. I framed it. Hung in the cabin. Mercy in memory. Jack surfaced in February. Email from A.ca domain. Heard about your old man.
Sorry.
For everything. Let me make it right. I replied once. Writes relative. Stay north. No bridge. But no bomb either. Spring thawed regrets. Dad slipped away in March. Peaceful, me at his side. Mom dozing. His last words. Proud.
Kid.
Always was. Lies? Maybe. But they warmed. Funeral packed the church in Rhinebeck. Old cronies. New rivals. Ghosts in suits. Eulogy mine. Harlan wasn't perfect. Hell. We weren't family half the time. But we burned bright. Laughter rippled.
Cathartic.
After. The cabin called. I rebuilt there, not whiskey.
But me.
A distillery of one. Small batch stories. Books on trauma. Hikes that healed.
Rito visited.
Bearing wine. You're a phoenix.
Stel.
Ash to empire.
Solo empire.
I clinked, grinning. Summer bloomed wild. Whitaker's trial a sideshow. Him pleading to lesser counts. Me the star witness who wasn't. Tommy paroled early. 2020, COVID mercy. Vanishing to Alaska. Crab boats his penance. Postcards sporadic. Cold here.
Clean.
Mom and I. Dinners.
Tentative.
Her place in Savannah. Mine in the city. We're not unbreakable, she'd say. Echoing me. But bendable. Fall leaves turned. Anniversary of the dinner. I hosted again. Real this time, Mom. Rita. A few sterling allies. Table groaned with ribeye. Risotto upgraded. Toasts to futures. But the echo lingered. My rebirth. The fractured truth. Therapy unpacked it. Dissociative episode post-escape. Memories weaponized by will to survive.
No mysticism.
Just mind's grit. I wrote it down. A memoir draft. Whiskey burn. A daughter's reckoning. Agent snapped it up. By winter. Bids flew. New Year's Eve. 2016. Balcony perch. Waldorf now mine. Full circle. Fireworks bloomed. City alive.
No ghosts.
Just me, Stella Harlan. Unbetrayed. The controversial thread? Those decisions. Exiling kin. Faking footage. Choosing blood over blade. Caused fights in boardrooms. Family calls. My own mirror. But they forged the happy?
No.
Not saccharine. Bittersweet. Empire mine. But hollow without the rot. Family? Fractured. But mending. Postcards from Tommy. Weekly calls with Mom. Dads while funding scholarships for fixer girls. The silence after we're not family changed everything. Shattered to rebuild. I raised a glass to the skyline. Bourbon smooth. To the Harlans. Breakable. But unbreakable in the breaking. And damn if it didn't taste like victory.